Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mohammed Bayoumi. I'm working as the Environment and Energy Team Leader at UNDP Egypt. It's my pleasure to be the moderator of this distinguished panel today, together with my colleague, Dr. Marwan Awaijan from IDRC. Allow me first to start introducing the panel, distinguished panel, starting with His Excellency Dr. Hani Swaylam, Minister of Water Resources and Irrigation in Egypt, Dr. Wissam El-Bey, Regional Director for Canada International Development and Research Center, IDRC, Mr. Alessandro Fracassetti, Resident Representative for UNDP Egypt, Mr. Thaer Al-Mumani, Secretary General Assistant for Technical Affairs from Jordan, Minister of Water in Jordan, Mr. Abdel Hamid Manja, Director in the Ministry of Agriculture, Water Resources and Fisheries in Tunisia. He's going to be joining us in a few minutes because he's stuck in another session. Mr. Shaima Gargash, Director of Energy and Sustainability, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, United Arab Emirates. Ms. Jihan El-Wardi, Director of Unconventional Water Resources at the Ministry of Equipment and Water in Morocco. Ms. Shannon McCarthy, the Executive Director and Secretary General for the International Desalination and Reuse Association, IDRA. Before starting the session, I would like to give you some background about the issue of solar power desalination for irrigation and why we are involved in this business. The story started actually in 2022 in Sharm el-Sheikh when the COP27 presidency has announced the AWARE initiative, which was a landmark point actually in the climate change negotiations, where water for the first time was put into the UNFCCC climate change negotiation, which is a landmark moment actually for adaptation issues to enter into the business of negotiation. UNDP announced support to AWARE initiative after COP27 on the work stream related to water-related climate change mitigation and adaptation technologies. The reason behind UNDP joining in this initiative is the logic behind the support that has been given over the last several years for climate change mitigation technologies and renewable energies and energy efficiency. And we have seen now a track for energy transition globally, thanks for the advancement in the technologies of climate change mitigation in general. Unfortunately, climate change adaptation technologies did not receive the same attention from the global community, and it is believed to be the main reason for the lag of climate adaptation actions, because the technology did not advance, to provide the support for implementation like it happened with renewable energy and energy efficiency. UNDP, in order to enter into this area, have organized a roundtable last year in the Cairo Water Week, which was attended by several ministers from Arab states and African countries to discuss what could be the adaptation issues in the water sector. And actually, there was a consensus in the meeting. Almost everybody in the meeting was in agreement that there is a need to advance alternative water development technologies, and this includes water reclamation and water desalination. We had presentations actually on this topic in the roundtable last year. Desalination, actually, water desalination for irrigation came as a strong, prominent issue in the roundtable last year in the Cairo Water Week, with the success stories that we see in Spain and in Australia for solar power desalination for irrigation. And this was the motivation that we start, to put some attention and study more how can we push for this type of technology to be more environment friendly and reach the small farmers around the world at the end of the day. In the COP28 last year in Dubai, UNDP has reached an agreement with the IDRC, Canada IDRC, in order to explore opportunities for development of alternative water resources technologies, in particular when we are talking about desalination for irrigation, through a research project that include a number of Arab states as a start to close the knowledge gap that we have in this business, and start to see how this can be moved into a business-oriented machine, I mean, that can lead to the spread of these technologies at a later stage. At the moment, UNDP, jointly with IDRC, we're exploring the opportunity of developing this project in 4 countries that are participating with us today, starting from Morocco, Tunisia, Egypt, and Jordan. And we are privileged to have the United Arab Emirates with us in the panel, which is the big investor in the desalination technology. And we will see through this session the potential, I mean, for the development of this project. And there are technical meetings that are taking place at the side of the Cairo Water Week in order to shape up the project, hopefully that can be presented, I mean, next year to our boards and we start implementation. The session is going to be divided into 2 parts. The first part, we are going to have 3 short presentations from developed and developing countries on desalination for irrigation. We have the case studies from Spain, Morocco, and Jordan. And the second part of the session that will be moderated by my colleague, Dr. Marwan Awaijan, is going to be on a panel questions and answer, I mean, for the panelists as a follow-up to what we are going to see in this presentation. Without further delay, I would like to invite Mr. Mario Aros from Aquamed. He is the Deputy Operation Technical Advisor for Aquamed to give his presentation about the successful experience of Spain in this regard. Please, Mr. Mario.
So, good morning, everyone. First of all, I want to especially thank the Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation, UNDP, and IDRC for this opportunity. For me, it's a real honor to be here in Egypt, where irrigation began for all of us, to share our experience in desalination for irrigation. I've divided my presentation into 3 main chapters. First, I will make a short introduction of Aquamed. Then I'll explain what I think from our experience. They are the key factors that shall be taken into account for large-scale use of desalination water for irrigation. And finally, in the last part, I go through our next challenges. Sorry. The story of desalination in Spain began a long time ago. Indeed, it started in 1987 when the first desalination plant for irrigation was built. It was built in Canary Islands, and a few years later, in the 90s, desalination for irrigation leaped from the Canary Islands to the mainland. In those years, Spain faced a severe drought, and many small private desalination plants were built along the Mediterranean area. These plants were mainly brackish reverse osmosis plants. At the end, the extraction of these plants ended causing several problems, like overexploitation of groundwater and even an increase in the salinity of aquifers. Then, in 2004, the Spanish government created Aquamed to develop, among other projects, several large seawater desalination plants to face water management problems in the Mediterranean area. I have to say that after the construction of these large plants, which I'll detail later, many small brackish plants were closed, and its users switched to our large seawater desalination plants. So how do we fund our projects? Aquamed mainly works with three kinds of funds: own equity, debt, mainly from a loan signed by the European Investment Bank with we consider a low rate of interest, just 1.43%, and also European funds from FEDER, cohesion, and next generation programs. Part of these European funds are subsidized, and part are also loans. In the presentation, you can see the amount of these funds for Aquamed. This mix of funds provides us two important things: low financial and low capital cost for our desalination projects. During these years, Aquamed has developed 5 large seawater reverse osmosis desalination plants for irrigation. In this slide, you can see the main features of our desalination plants for agriculture. One of them, I would like to remind, Torrevieja plant, is currently the biggest desalination plant in Europe, with a production capacity of 240,000 cubic meters per day. Total production capacity of these plants accounts for about 760,000 cubic meters per day. Here you have the evolution of desalination in Aquamed in those years. In green, the green one is the supply for irrigation, and the blue one is our supply for drinking water, for municipal uses. Also, you have the date when our desalination plants began its operations. Last year, 2023, our total production was around 300 cubic hectometers. 60% of this volume, around 180 cubic hectometers, were destined for irrigation. I know that many of you are really concerned about the environmental issues regarding brine discharge. I have to say, from our experience, that over those years operating desalination plants, we never have detected any problem, any environmental issue related to brine discharge. To achieve this, we have done the following. First, you have to start in the very early phase of the project. In the design phase of the project, altimetry, which is a map of the bottom of the sea, is drawn up by special sonars in order to identify protected areas. In our area, we are especially concerned with a special alga called Posidonia oceanica. Then, once you have developed these studies, you have to put the discharge far from these areas. And how do you discharge the brine? Just through a pipe laid on the seabed, and which is very important, with a final section, we have small, very small diameter diffusers that give the needed pressure to the discharge. This pressure allows the brine to mix with seawater in a very, very small surface. So once you have the brine mixed with the seawater, you don't have any problem. Nevertheless, during the operation of the plant, a special monitoring plan is carried out, taking salinity measurements at points very close to the protected area. You have some pictures about this. A picture of the diffusers, the second one, and how, this is an example of the measures we do in the monitoring plan. Now, we move to the second part. Key factors for large-scale use of desalinator for irrigation. This slide, what I consider is a very important one of this presentation, shows what we consider the 4 key factors that have been taken into account for desalination for irrigation. These factors are water governance, integrated water resource systems, water management on farms, and of course, cost of desalinated water. All these factors must work together. If you want to achieve the result, desired result, which is large-scale use of desalinated water for irrigation, all these factors must be very well balanced. If any of them fails, I have to say that it's going to be very difficult to be able to extend desalination for agriculture. Now we're going to move to explain these factors. First, water governance. From our experience, I have to say that regulation, public regulation, is very important when we talk about desalination for irrigation. Let me explain how. In Spain, desalinated water belongs to public hydraulic domain. And what does it mean? This means that to use desalinated water, it is mandatory to obtain an administrative authorization. It could be a concession or just a temporary agreement. This authorization is granted by the Public Hydraulic Administration. This authorization contains all the data to identify the water supply. They identify the farm, the maximum annual volume of desalinated water for irrigation, the desalination plant from which it will be supplied, and also the term of the authorization, which can be extended to 25 years if we are talking about a concession. After obtaining this authorization, the farmer can sign an agreement with Aquamed for a long-term supply of desalinated water. This agreement regulates our relation with the farmer and contains all the cost of desalinated water and all the features we have to take into account to guarantee the supply. This scheme provides 2 important things: security to the farmers and stability to Aquamed's activity. Now, continuing to the governance of water, we have to wonder what model is most suitable for developing large desalination plants for irrigation purposes. You can choose from 100% public funding up to 100% private funding in any of PPP options, as it's shown. In case of Aquamed desalination plants for irrigation have been developed under a 100% public model, with private companies providing us design and build and operation services, with EPC contracts and operation and maintenance contracts. From our experience, we think that this model fits better for desalination for agriculture, especially because two points: because of the demand risk associated with the use and because of the sensitivity to the price of water for agriculture. Now we move to the second key point: integrate water resource systems. At this point, I would like to highlight that desalinated water for irrigation must be integrated into the hydric balance. But how? As the last source. carefully, preventing the complete depletion of other sources, like groundwater. At this point, if an aquifer can still be recovered, it's not exhausted, desalination can play a remarkable role to recover it, because it can guarantee renewable water, which may reduce the groundwater use. Besides, for many times, it's also necessary to improve irrigation networks in order to avoid losses into the water distribution. 3, water management on farms. This is a very important point. I want to give some information about the management of desalinated water for agriculture in Spain. Of course, water management cannot be the same in all areas because crops have very different sensitivities to the price of water. For example, in high-yield crops, like greenhouse tomatoes, for example, the cost of water in Spanish area accounts for between 4 and 6% of the cost of the farm. If we put an eye on other kind of crops, for example, citrus, this range is a bit higher. So the cost of water accounts for a range between 20 and 30%. Saying that, typically in the southwest of Spain, most farmers mix different water sources, mix desalinated water with another sources. The mix depends on several things: availability, price, time of the year, and also the nutritional interests of the crop. In this mix, I have to say that desalinated water plays a key role due to two things: its guarantee in both volume and also in quality. In this slide, you have an example of one real mix. In this case, the area is called Campo de Níjar, which is located in Almeria, which is the driest area of Spain. The crop you are shown is greenhouse tomato. And you can see how, with this mix, the desalinated water improves all the features of the other available source, which in this case is groundwater. Now we move to the last but not least, of course, point, which is costs. This slide I'm going to share with you our current cost. But first, just remember that, as I said before, due to our low financial rate and low leverage rate, we get a very low capital cost. Saying that, in this year, the current cost of desalination water for Aquamed accounts for 51 cents euro per cubic meter. Last year, the cost was higher, 70 euros per cubic meter. Why explain this? The only answer is energy cost. Last year, Aquamed energy cost was about 12 cents per kilowatt. Current year, energy cost in Spain has decreased until 8 cents per kilowatt hour. Why happens that? You have to take into account that the Spanish price energy is still strongly influenced by the price of hydrocarbons, especially natural gas. So this explains the variation of these components. I have to highlight also that in terms of fixed costs, given allocation, the cost driver in this case is the rate of production. So the scale factor is going to play a very important role to reduce fixed costs. As I said, energy costs depend on two things: energy efficiency and energy price. As many of you, I saw you well know, energy efficiency in reverse osmosis is quite steady currently. due to technological advances. So the only chance we have to decrease dramatically the energy cost is reducing the purchase price of the energy. But how we can do it in a very volatile energy market as Spain's market? Simply disconnecting from the market and betting on self-consumption energy, in our case, with renewable energy, specifically with photovoltaic energy. Regarding fixed costs, as I said, to reduce this, you have to take into account the scale factor. So the only way to reduce fixed costs is just by increasing our production capacity. Taking into account the cost drivers, I've just explained it. In this last part of the presentation, I'm going to explain our next challenges to reduce the desalination cost for irrigation. Here are the challenges we are facing. It's not an easy one. Now our challenge is to reduce the average cost of desalinated water for irrigation below 40 cents euro per cubic meter. To achieve this, Aquamed is developing two major investment plans. One, increase production capacity, and two, photovoltaic energy for self-consumption. Regarding the increased production capacity, our investment plan for this accounts for 245 million euro, in order to add around 90 cubic hectometer cubics more, which means almost 30% more capacity. And the second investment plan, renewable energy. Aquamed is now developing new photovoltaic plants for self-consumption. What does it mean? That these plants are going to be linked to the 5 desalination plants we have already operating for agriculture. We have chosen this technology for renewable energy due to several features: technological efficiency, reduced costs, its modularity, and its ease of assembly and operation. All of these PV plants will have the necessary equipment to enable our self-consumption. The aim with all this is to reach that 35% of the energy demanded for our desalination plants will come from self-consumption. We cannot, all energy demand, at this moment we're not able to reach from the sun, but our aim, in order to reduce the cost to the level I said, is this 35%. The investment plan accounts for this program for 290 million euros. Here you have an example of an ongoing project. In this case, it's a PV plant for Aguilas plant. It is a photovoltaic plant with an energy installed around 50 megawatts. And this project, we are expecting that the coming year, at the beginning of the coming year, we are expecting to bid the EPC contracts to develop this project. Not only this, not only Aguilas, but also similar projects for the rest of our desalination plants for agriculture. And now to conclude, I want to share with you our learned lessons from those years operating desalination plants for irrigation purposes. I resume these lessons in 7 points. I'm going to remember this. 1, be the regulation of the salination plant and public role is needed. It provides security to the farmers and stability to the salination activity. 2, there are technical solutions that have been tested for brine discharge with no environmental impact. 3, the use of the salinated water for agriculture can play a very remarkable role to recover overexploited aquifers. 4, the salinated water is used in agriculture only if it has a reasonable cost in relation to the economic benefit of the crops. For example, high-yield crops like greenhouse farms. 5, the salinated water management techniques, mixtures, should be taught to farmers. Learning is a very important issue. 6, to reduce fixed costs, it's necessary to gain full capacity production in enlarged plants. A scale factor plays always a key role to reduce the salination costs. And 7, photovoltaic self-consumption is, for us, one of the best options to reduce energy cost and to reduce, which is very important in Spain's case, the exposure to electric market. So, Shukran Gazilan, thank you very much. This ends my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mario, for an interesting presentation. 25 years ago, if you speak to water specialists about using desalinated water for irrigation with this scale, they would say that this is kind of science fiction. We see this reality happening today. Aquamed is a successful model in Spain for doing that. As explained by Mr. Mario, this was a public-private partnership. Private sector definitely is going to play a big role in expanding the use of the technology once the governance system and the business model is set. I'm glad that we have with us Ms. Shannon McCarthy, representative for the IDRA. Private sector definitely is going to be the lead in this issue, and through the discussion with IDRA, she kindly highlighted that the private sector companies would be more interested in supporting this development dimension. The good news actually that this is not only taking place in Spain. Morocco is becoming the first country, probably developing country, to start to expand the use of desalinated water for irrigation, a model that now is under development in Morocco. And we are privileged to have Engineer Jihan El-Wardi, the head of Unconventional Water Development Services at the Ministry of Equipment and Water, Morocco. Please.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you here. Today, I'm eager to present the situation of desalination in Morocco. To do so, I'm going first to give you a quick context about the water resources in Morocco. So, our country, with a population of 36 million and an area of more than 710 square kilometers, relies heavily on agriculture and mining as main components of our economy. Of this land, 12% is dedicated to useful agricultural activities. And we have 10 hydrologic basins, and we have an annual available water of 22 billion cubic meters per year, with 18 billion of surface water and 4 billion from groundwater. But like many countries, we are facing some challenges, starting with the climate change, leading to more frequent flood and drought. We also struggle from the irregular distribution of water across time and space, like you can see in these two graphs in the slide. We have also the problem of erosion and loss of dam reservoirs capacity, and we are also struggling from the overexploitation of groundwater. Since we have no precipitations or little of precipitations, we are over-consuming from our grand resources. We have also the problem or the challenge of growing water demand due to the increase of demographic, tourists, and agriculture and economic activities. We are facing some challenges, but we are also making some great achievements. In terms of infrastructures, we have 144 large dams. We have also 146 small and medium dams. We have 246 hydrologic stations, and we have 17 water transfer projects, and we have 15 seawater desalination stations. Talking about seawater, I have to mention that our country has started the journey of desalination since the 19s, and we started desalination in the south of Morocco. Later, because of the limited conventional resources, a lot of desalination projects have been implemented, like you can see in this map. And now we have a total capacity of 192 million cubic meter per year. We have also 6 under construction projects, including the Casablanca, which will be the biggest in Africa, with a capacity of 300 million cubic meter per year. Another particularity of this project is that it will be entirely powered by renewable energy. And this project will provide also both drinking water and irrigation water. And talking about irrigation, the projects I highlighted here are the projects that contain or will contain the irrigation component. And actually now in Morocco, we have only one desalination plant that have the irrigation component, which is the Stuka desalination plant. And before talking about the project, it is important to talk about the area it serves. Well, the Stuka Aitbaha area is well known for its advanced agriculture, especially vegetable farming, playing a crucial role in Moroccan's export of fresh produce. And just to give you a sense of its importance, this region accounts over 90% of Moroccan's tomato exports, making it a vital economic hub for the country. But this region faces a lot of challenges, starting with the overexploitation of groundwater resources and the continual water demand growing. So to face these challenges, we implemented the desalination plant. It was launched by His Majesty the King Mohammed VI in 2020, and the project holders are the Ministry of Agriculture and the National Office of Electricity and Drinking Water. This project has 2 objectives. The first objective is to reduce the pressure on groundwater resources, since, as I mentioned before, we are really over-consuming of our groundwater resources. Also, one of the objectives is to ensure a reliable drinking water supply for 800,000 residents of Agadir and irrigate across 50,000 hectares, new and old perimeters, especially for high value-added crops. Well, for the capacity of this project, it's 275,000 cubic meter per day, and it is planned to extend it to 400,000 cubic meter per day, with 200,000 for irrigation. On the technical side, this project has a 491 kilometer of irrigation network. The intake used for this project is a direct intake, and for the brine, we discharge it with pipe and diffusers. On the financial side, The first stage of this project requires an investment of 4.48 billion dirhams, which is around 448 million of dollars, covering both the construction of desalination plant and the associated infrastructures. The investment is split into two main components: irrigation component found through state subsidies, and the drinking water component financed through a project finance model. Talking about money, the cost of desalinated water is approximately $1 per cubic meter, and but the farmers are able to buy it with only $0.50 thanks to state subsidies. And the model adopted for this project is a PPP approach, which is public-private partnership under a 30-year concession agreement, which includes 3 years of construction and 27 years of operation, maintenance, and renewal. And the objective is to facilitate a balanced sharing of risk and responsibilities between public entities and private entities. And we are planning to use the same approach for all the planned desalination projects, like you can see in this map. And this ambitious program will allow us to reach a total capacity of 1.5 billion cubic meter per year. And we are planning to achieve this capacity using renewable energy and the latest technologies, so we can address the challenges we are facing right now in terms of desalination, starting with the high investment and operational cost. Also, the cost of desalinated water, which is really high, especially for farmers that are used to buy water at much lower prices. We are also planning to address the challenge of the brine. Like in Morocco, like many countries, we discharge the brine into the sea. But like in Spain, we discharge it using pipe and diffusers. But I still believe that we can do better. There are a lot of solutions like brine mining. And the last challenge is the high energy consumption and the carbon dioxide emissions. Like all of you now, the process desalination is energy intensive. It requires a very significant quantity of energy, which will impact both cost and environment. So, and there's something I find really interesting, is that we went to desalination to face the climate change impact, but it's like a vicious cycle. So we have climate change. One of the impact is water scarcity. To face this water scarcity, we went to desalination, but the process desalination is energy consuming, so it gives us a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. Because of this greenhouse gas emissions, we will have a more serious climate change. So it's a vicious cycle, and to break this cycle, we have and we must integrate renewable energy. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Jihan Al-Wardani, for your informative presentation. I hope that you are not alarmed by the subsidies component in the desalination in Morocco, because this is supposed to be a transitional phase, and with the advancement of the technology, this subsidy is going to go down. Morocco is known to be one of the countries, the pioneer countries in the region that have invested in solar energy 10 years ago. And again, they were subsidizing, renewable energy, solar energy. And now we have the cheapest source of electricity is coming from solar energy, and thanks to the efforts of the countries that have subsidized this technology at the beginning. Working in the area of climate change mitigation, again, I have to acknowledge that there is a lot to be learned from the subsidies that has been given to renewable energy, solar and wind energy, over the last 10, 15 years in order to make the prices go down as we see today. But this is not going to be the effort of one country. This has to be a collective effort. And I really acknowledge that Morocco is taking this step forward, leading hopefully the Arab states, to get into the business of using desalinated water for irrigation. Without further delay, I would like to invite Dr. Luna Al-Hadidi, a researcher in the National Agriculture Research Center in Jordan. She's going to give us another dimension of experimental work that's being done in Jordan on the issue of desalination for irrigation. Please.
Good morning, everybody. I would like to talk about desalination in Jordan. Of course, according to the National Water Strategy in Jordan, Jordan is the second water scarce country in the world in its renewable water resources. Our per capita is 61 meter cube per capita per year based on 2021. We face increase in population. In 2021, Jordan population reached 11 million, due also to continuous fronts of refugees. And this population is expected to be increased to 16.8 million by 2040. And our per capita also is expected to decrease to 35 meter cube per capita per year. Also, beside the increase in population, the same as other countries, climate change caused further 15% decline in fresh water resources, or will cause, of course, and continuous to cause by 2040. So, our water supplies are within the surface water and groundwater. As you can see from the figure, we are really below the safe yield in groundwater. So we have over-exploitation of our groundwater resources. Also, we have non-renewable groundwater fraction. Jordan also depends in a large scale on reclaimed wastewater in irrigation. And we have 0.7 as seawater desalination, but for industrial purposes. For our those supplies, how this water used, you can see that this is the different categories or uses that our water is used, with around or less than 50% of our water resources is used for irrigation. Of course, we have brackish ground and surface water desalination, depending on the situation of these desalination plants, of 53 million cubic meter and 77 million cubic meter, but all this is for domestic or drinking purposes. So as you see that future water supplies in Jordan rely mainly on sea and brackish water desalination, and of course more reclaimed wastewater of better quality. Besides, also Jordan really invests in different water harvesting projects. Irrigated agriculture, as you can see from the figure, is boomed from year to year, especially in the highland. But this growth in irrigated agriculture will not be sustainable without a significant substitution of reclaimed water for this fresh water, especially in the highland where the farmers are using groundwater for irrigation. So our current status of desalination, National Water Strategy paid a lot of attention for desalination, especially for drinking purposes, to achieve a sustainable balance, as we said, between the supply and the demand, because the increase deficit in supply or in water resources in supply and demand will cause further deterioration of water resources in Jordan. We have 21 desalination plants belong to the government, one plant for seawater desalination, and another 20 plants for brackish ground desalination. Of course, we have other additional desalination plants that are operated by the private sector, but comprehensive or systematic data or overview of these plants does not exist. So when coming to desalination in agriculture, we should say that we have many desalination plants belongs to many farmers in the Jordan Valley since more than 10 or 15 years, but on private, use and work with electricity. And of course, with no data regarding these desalination units or systems. But regarding to research and with the National Agricultural Research Center experience, NARC implemented 5 desalination research projects for irrigation purposes. 3 of these projects were focusing on different desalination technologies. Of course, these technologies were solar power technologies. The other 2 projects focused on the reuse of one of the most important fraction or desalination byproduct, which is the brine. We should also emphasize here that these projects are with complete funding for these systems. Of course, with the time being and the small, time remains within one project, we were able to do some assessment for the implementation of those desalination technologies for some farmers. We saw that from the data collected that these desalination plants resulted in a significant electricity saving in both farms. Also, they led to substantial saving in water resources by, of course, good %. Additionally, also, the desalination play a crucial role for those farmers to increase their production. Because the desalination here in this project were equipped or coupled by an IoT system, decision support system, mixing system, which enable those farmers to mix their different water qualities at the farm and to produce more crops for these farms. So the farmers were able to increase their productivity and their profits. Major products or major crops grown were cash crop vegetables, fig, some banana, and of course, the majority is the date palm. Of course, when we come of one of the biggest challenge in desalination, which is the brine, and with a literature review study that did in Jordan for the period 2019-2021, the writer or the author gathered data from 100 brackish water desalination. And according to the literature review collected, the daily amount of generated brine around all the country is around 22 million cubic meter per year. But with very high salinity range up being 8,274 ppm. Of course, when coming to the disposal methodology, 30% of these plants discharge their brine into valleys. 8%, around 8.4%, discharge their brine or use their brine in agriculture, irrigation, after mixing with or without blending, depending on the salinity of this brine. 4.7% of these plants, they have evaporation bonds. 14% of those plants dispose the brine into on-site wastewater facilities. And around 40% of these plants, they did not offer really any data. Of course, from the data of the Ministry of Water and Irrigation, some of the brine that produced by the desalination plants here in Jordan is discharged safely to the Dead Sea. Some is discharged to a brine tank, and then the brine is allowed to drain to Sel Zarqa via an open channel. Of course, the private desalination plants that are located in different governorates in Jordan, they discharge brine into nearby wadis or to the sewer system, because there is no regulation for brine disposal, or there is no reuse, not yet for brine, especially for the research that we did for aquaponic system and for raising fish and shrimp. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Luna, for the presentation. This ends the first part of our session, and I would like to invite my colleague, Dr. Marwan Ouaijan, Program Specialist, Senior Program Specialist, IDRC, to take the lead on the panel discussion.
Your Excellency, Professor Swellim, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Desalination for irrigation is no doubt a promising solution to produce clean and precious water. However, it has a detrimental environmental impact through the co-produced brine and the use of chemicals released throughout the process. It is also a costly solution. This means, in theory, desalination for irrigation should be discussed as an option to bridge the gap between water demand and water supply after having finalized an optimal water demand management and an optimal water supply management. This will lead us to the first question. How far is the MENA region from an optimal water demand management, and how far is the MENA region from an optimal water supply management? I would like to share with you two illustrative examples based on scientific papers published by Moroccan researchers and by Jordanian researchers. In Morocco, the Green Morocco Plan, which is the agricultural strategy in Morocco 2008-2020, strongly encouraged the production and the exportation of water-intensive products. As a consequence, the total volume of virtual water export was on the rise. Therefore, Morocco, somehow, by encouraging the export of water-intensive products, somehow they induce negative impacts on their water resources. This also contradicts the virtual water trade theory. This theory implies that water-scarce countries should be importing water-intensive products and producing locally crops that require less water. The study concluded that there is great potential for Morocco to alleviate its water scarcity by adjusting the international trade structure of crop production. In Jordan, which is one of the most driest country in the world, banana cultivation in the Jordan River Valley consumes annually more than 25 million cubic meter. 40% are coming from clean, high-quality groundwater, and 60% are brackish or desalinated water. Banana cultivation is profitable due to protective measures to keeping the local price higher than the international market, plus no charge policy for groundwater use. Those two examples illustrate how far we are or how close we are from an optimal water demand management and water supply management. The second question, will desalination for irrigation make the MENA region even more distant from the optimal water demand and water supply management in agriculture while imposing a detrimental environmental impact? Those two questions, maybe they are a bit provocative. The purpose is to stimulate reflections and discussions and to situate ourselves when it comes to desalination, because we need really to assess how far we are from optimal use, and we need to know whether this new promising source of water would make us better off or worse off when it comes to optimal use of our resources. I would like to pass to the panel questions. Of course, if you would like to share your reflections on the two broad questions, you are welcome. And maybe I will give the floor to all our distinguished panelists if they would like to reflect on those two broad questions before I move to the specific questions. Yes, Ms. McCarthy.
No. I think these are two very, very important questions, and not only for the MENA region, but globally, because we see this happening in other parts of the world. And the discussion of water supply for irrigation and the type of products for which are being grown in different areas of the world where there is certainly water scarcity is a true narrative that must be discussed on a global level, because we know we have solutions to produce water. We have seen from our distinguished speakers, Jordan, Morocco, and Spain, that it can be done through desalination and, of course, coupling it with renewable energy, whether it be solar, wind, wave, or subsea desalination systems, it's possible. But truly, these two questions are are what we globally need to address. And so thank you for asking those. I think they're very important for this discussion.
Thank you very much, Ms. McCarthy. Mr. Wardi?
Can you hear me? Yeah. Well, thank you, Mr. Marwan, for these brilliant questions. I want just to clarify one thing, that given the water scarcity we are facing right now, we have stopped a lot of agricultural activities in Morocco to save water for drinking water supply. But we can't continue doing this because we have like a place in the international market that we have to save. This is why we integrated the irrigation component in all our planned desalination projects. So the objective is to provide drinking water supply and irrigation water, and to have more water independently of the climate or the conditions of the climate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, yes, Dr. Wissam.
Thank you very much. I mean, I think that those are very important questions, and I think that those are the questions that could be asked as part of research studies that are contextualized for each of the different countries that are interested in adopting such technologies. Because as we saw from the examples we heard this morning, that each country has its own challenges, its own context, and its own purposes for why they are looking at innovative technologies for addressing the water shortage issues. So I'm saying that because I think this is what we are here to also discuss, and this is part of the role of IDRC, that we are interested in addressing the research questions that will adapt the models to suit the challenges in the different countries, and that would also have cost-effective and climate resilient solutions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wissam. Your Excellency.
Thank you very much. I think I would start from the end user role and perspective. I think, first of all, the concept of producing more with less has to be implemented before desalinating the water for irrigation. And whoever is ready to work with desalination, we should be subsidizing and supporting. I was last week in Jordan together with the Inter-Islamic Network. And we visited a small-scale project. They are funding women to start up small business. So they give a greenhouse for each woman to coordinate, and they train them how to grow crops in greenhouse, etc. So I was just asking them, okay, what is the water consumption of the greenhouse per season? They will grow cucumber. And what's the water consumption per greenhouse? What is the productivity of each greenhouse in terms of crop? And then with my mobile, I was calculating the water footprint. So the water footprint of 1 kilogram of cucumber is 18 liters, 1/8. The normal water footprint of the same crop is 350. And that's what I mean by producing more with less. Why I'm saying this? Because if I have the price, I'm trying to connecting the dots of my colleague from Aquamed, $0.5 US per cubic meter, and you try to make the math here on this example that I just described, then the cost of water for each kilogram in this case is 1 cent. 1 US cent. If you can just do the math, you will end up by 1 cent per kilogram. In this case, you can implement desalination. Because if we are not willing to subsidize 1 cent in each kilogram of our products for the water, which is the most scarce resource for us, then there is an issue here. Because when we speak about desalination, we have to forget furrow, surface irrigation, flood irrigation. This has to be out of the equation. Otherwise, we will be demotivating ourselves all the time. We are speaking about producing more with less in a very efficient way. I didn't even go to hydroponics and aquaponics, which is more efficient. But let us speak about the technology that each one knows and implement. Drip irrigation for our crops in an efficient way. So this is the starting point. We have to agree that the method of producing crops from desalination is not the traditional way. So we have to manage our demand first and then introduce desalination to any project. That's my intervention to this specific point. So there is a role for the end users, there is a role for the technology. I can speak about it later if there is a chance. But there is also a role for us as a government is to subsidize and protect and also support the private sector to implement such a project, as Dr. Bayoumi said, at least at the beginning, till desalination follow the same path of photovoltaic. He always saying photovoltaic was 10 times more expensive 10 years ago. Today, imagine if we focus on desalination and support it like we supported the photovoltaic. Desalination will not be 50 cents after 10 years, it will be 5 cents maximum. But we have to follow the same. My question is always, who is going to do with the desalination like what we did with the renewable energy? Because China, Germany are not going to support desalination. We are the one who has to support desalination. The Mediterranean. We have to follow what they did for the renewable energy to minimize the cost of desalination in the future. They are not going to do it for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for your insights and reflections. Mr. Abdelhamid Mneja, how do you see the benefits of solar power desalination to Tunisia?
Thank you. Good afternoon for all. As we know, Tunisia is still heavily dependent on imported fossil fuels. And in the other part, Tunisia is quite rich on energy with solar energy with over than 3,000 hours of sunshine per year. So actually, we have 18 desalination plants. 3 big plants for seawater desalination, and we use it for domestic use, potable water, and 15 brackish water desalination plant. Also, we use it for drinking water supply, and we have 3 brackish water desalination plant for which use it for irrigation. The cost of the operating and maintenance cost is around, it varies between 0.8 euro to 1.2 euro per cubic meters, and energy represent around between 40 to 60% of the operating and maintenance cost. So solar energy will reduce when we use solar energy on photovoltaic system. We can reduce 30% the cost of energy. So also we can guarantee the sustainability of the source of energy, and we can it's offer another advantage, which is the independence from energy, Tunisia from energy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mneja. Same question to Mr. Sa'ir Al-Momani. How do you see the benefits of solar-powered desalination to Jordan?
Thank you, Marwan. Actually, as His Excellency said, in Jordan, most of the groundwater in Jordan is going to disappear, especially fresh water, and the drawdown is very high. And actually, we use around the safe yield for the groundwater abstraction is around 275 million cubic meter per year. This is the safe yield. But the amount of abstraction is more than 600 million cubic meter per year for the water supply and agriculture. Actually, the most important thing now in Jordan, it's the national conveyor. So from Aqaba, desalination, from Aqaba to Amman, around 400 kilometer to transmit the water from Aqaba to Amman. And it's need a lot of energy. And we will use the renewable energy for to decrease the cost of the transmission line. Actually, the water sector in Jordan is consumed around 15% from the total consumption of the energy in Jordan. And this is very high and very expensive. And most of the aquifer, we need to drill around 300, 400, 600 meter down, and this has cost a lot of the energy to abstract the water and transmit it to the different governorate and all the country in Jordan. Now we are, as you said in your question also regarding the water demand, we will not reach the water demand. We always behind the water demand, and this is difficult. And as I told you in the Jordan, it's most of the brackish water, it's around, we have to drill to 1,000 and 1,200. And this is also, it's for abstract of this water for more than 1 kilometer from the ground to up and to distribute it and to or use it for irrigation, it's need a renewable energy. And in Jordan, as you know, it's around, we have around 310 days sunshine in Jordan, mostly on most of the country, and in some area around 350 days. It's sunshine, and especially in the south and in the eastern Jordan. And in the eastern Jordan, it's far away from the far away from the cities, and need, I think the renewable energy, it will be the most important factor in this area. And I hope in the future we can, it's, for Jordan, it's no option in the future. We are, the brackish water is and seawater is the main option what we have in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Momani. Dr. Wissam El-Bey, you present Canada's International Development Research Center. Mr. Alessandro Fracassetti, you present United Nations Development Program. I would like to ask you, how do you see the role of international organizations in supporting or in advancing desalination for irrigation as a promising, sustainable, viable solution? Starting with Dr. Wissam.
Yes, thank you, Marwan, for this question. I mean, as you said, I mean, IDRC funds research that is focused on the global south and how to build evidence that would inform the right policies for the different countries we are supporting in order to promote an inclusive and sustainable world. And IDRC has over 3 decades of research that has been done in different regions on climate change and water adaptations that we can leverage from Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean, and also on building resilience of community in order to promote community-based approaches and local level water management, and researching smart solutions for water crisis, like, for example, water harvesting, smart irrigation systems, and using renewable energy, like the example we are seeing here. I think one of the main important things for us is to look at also the mitigation strategies based on environmental impact assessments in each of the different contexts in order to adapt the right approaches for the context of the countries. And in addition, to look at desalination for irrigation as part of a holistic approach and in conjunction with other strategies like efficient water management, and to look at also the role of the different sectors and how to convene discussions that would make complementary approaches from the various sectors.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sam. Mr. Fracassetti.
The short answer to your question is that international agents can play a crucial role in advancing desalination technology, provided the countries that we're trying to support really show a lot of interest, right? And I think what we are seeing today is not only that there is a lot of interest in the region, but a lot of work has happened already to move forward from some of the very good best practice that we saw in other areas, like we heard the colleague from Spain. I also want to thank Minister Hani here because he has supported it's an idea that we have tried to promote it as UNDP, also with DRC, really to look further into this question of irrigation, of desalination for irrigation. And of course, you know, being an international agency with a strong environmental mandate, for us it's very, very important also that we look into any potential criticism or question that there can be around this technology. So obviously one way that agencies like ours and others can do is by funding researchers, promoting technology transfer, and supporting eco-friendly solutions like, as we heard, solar-powered desalination, wind-powered, wave, any other renewable-powered technology that can make desalination not only cheaper, which I think it's the key point that has been made here, but also environmentally friendly, so that we don't have to then take care of indirect consequences of the desalination on the environment. Let me say here that we are partnering with DRC to explore really opportunities for a regional program to gather the necessary information to advance to pilot or even investment stages for these areas. We're also specifically looking at opportunities to apply innovative technologies to make use of the salts and minerals in the brine to create truly circular economies from these approaches. Trying to really attack it really from all sides. But thank you again for all the support in putting this together, and I hope we can continue this discussion, which we really started also at Cairo Water Week last year. We continued it at COP28 in other similar opportunities over the next week and months.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fracassetti, and we are looking forward to a continuous collaboration with UNDP. We still have 6 minutes and for 2 questions and concluding remark by Your Excellency. So quickly to Ms. Shaima Gargash, United Arab Emirates is a strong investor in desalination technologies. Do you see any future plan in United Arab Emirates to use desalination for irrigation?
Okay, great. Thank you all. I mean, the conversation today has been extremely technical, but also extremely important considering where we currently are in the world. Water scarcity for us is extremely important, and finding solutions to combat or finding to sustain kind of water for a growing population around the world is extremely important. I mean, if you look at the UAE, obviously we're a very water scarce country. Technology in desalination is number one. We have not only a growing population, but a growing economy to feed into. And when we look at the usage of water and desalination, agriculture, irrigation is extremely important, finding cost-efficient ways, but also to sustain and support in a cost-effective manner the other various growing industries like artificial intelligence, digital economy, etc., and how that can adapt to the economic growth and sustain it. We understand the environmental implications from desalination. And also after hosting COP28, obviously we want to emphasize more and more through global efforts on how to find innovative solutions to manage the negative implications on environment, but also embedding clean and sustainable renewable energy in the process of desalination. And I think when we, as a UAE, not only are we a small country, but we also understand the importance of innovation. A lot of folks here on the panel spoke about PPP. And I think when we look at private-public partnership, we shouldn't only look at the private sector, technically, or academics, but also kind of think beyond that in a very, how do we innovate the industry by bringing in more creative thinkers? And so the UAE has looked at investing more in international awards. And so there's the Zayed Sustainability Prize, there's the recently announced Mohammed bin Zayed Water Initiative that focuses on tackling water scarcity, partnering with X Prize. We have launched the biggest prize purse of $119 million from the $150 million that was announced at COP28. And so by bringing in and reaching out to various audiences that are not the typical stakeholders in this whole process is also important. We also need to look into kind of the youth, and one of the largest growing youth population around the world falls in the Africa continent and the Middle East. And so we need to also look at how do we sustain that for future generations, working collaboratively, and that's what a lot of folks here have been emphasizing on. If we look at what the UAE is doing, yes, we're embedding a lot of clean energy in desalination. Masdar is major. But we also are doing a lot of that implementation of bridging these new technologies in different continents. We have our colleagues, for instance, Senegal, who are co-hosting the UN 2026 Water Conference. And they're also going to be investing in their first water desalination plant. So even not so water scarce countries are investing in it because we understand the need to sustain the demand growing and feeding into the various markets. For the UAE, obviously we'll be playing more and more. Food security for us is key, but when we talk about food security, we cannot neglect the water security element as well. And so, for instance, 90% of groundwater comes from ground wells in agriculture in the UAE. And that's something that once depleted is very difficult to kind of to sustain. And so we want to look at it towards more forward-looking and how do we continue sustaining that, bringing in new innovations and technologies, but ensuring that we are also environmentally cautious of what's happening around us. And so, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gargash. Last question to Ms. Shannon McCarthy. How do you see the role of the business community and of the private sector to support desalination for irrigation?
Thank you for the question. I would like to formally introduce the International Desalination and Water Reuse Association. It was established in 1973 in the United States, and it is recognized by the United Nations ECOSOC community and a member of the FAO Water for Agriculture initiative. So 1973, let's go back to the 1960s when President Kennedy stated, one of man's greatest inventions will be to turn salt water into sweet water. Desalination is a solution. It's not the only solution. It's one of the solutions of many in integrated water resources management. The role of the private sector is certainly geared toward innovation. And it has been all of these years, and that's why we have seen the price of desalination drop and become more effective. And now the role of, specifically for this panel discussion on renewable energy for desalination, that is the game changer. As my colleague, Mrs. Gargash said about the UAE, they are operating large scale. The largest desalination plant in the world is Al Tawila, 909,000 cubic meters a day, powered 40% by renewable energy. This is, again, a game changer, an iconic project. If we can do it large scale, we can certainly do it for irrigation, renewable powered desalination for irrigation. I'd like to also mention His Excellency's comment on supply and demand is critical. The private sector has the interest to lower cost, lower the water footprint, environmental footprint, manage the brine. I mean, one of the new and very important initiatives is to consider desalination where possible as a on-land seawater mining project, not a desalination project, but a seawater mining project for precious minerals and metals that can supply downstream industries, and the water is a byproduct. So it's a matter of the private sector is fully engaged in innovation and rolling out new concepts. What is missing is, and what is needed is political will. We see here today, Cairo Water Week, a lot of political will being expressed for innovation and desalination, but that's not the case everywhere. And so I think it's a part of, one of the roles of the private sector is certainly knowledge sharing. Certainly we need frameworks for PPP models, for more projects to be implemented and financial support to be given. But I think that certainly the private sector will push and continues to push innovation in desalination, which will lower the cost and the environmental footprint of this technology.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ms. McCarthy. Your Excellency, Professor Suhailem, if you would like to make any concluding remark before we end the session, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's very dangerous to give me the mic again for this topic. Okay. The question is, do we have other options? The problem now when you speak about desalination for irrigation, there is still resistance for the concept. But let me ask the ones who are resisting, do we have other options? In case of Egypt, we are recycling 21 billion cubic meter, and we are jumping now to 26 after the 3 water treatment plant. This is an agriculture wastewater. But the problem is, even the agriculture wastewater is becoming saline from being more and more recycled. So even the agriculture wastewater, it needs desalination. So the word desalination is coming anyway. Because before, we were diluting the agriculture wastewater to reduce the amount of salt. We don't have fresh water anymore to dilute the agriculture wastewater. So, do we have to use desalination for irrigation tomorrow? No, but we have to start. We cannot just keep waiting, because this is a process that's going to take time. We are at the beginning of the process. We are not yet ready. Even if it was presented today in a simpler way, but the story is too complex. And each one of our stakeholders has a specific role to play. The end users, I think I explained, produce more with less, move to drip irrigation, hydroponics, aquaponics, be ready to plug and play your system, your irrigation system with another source, which is desal. Then this is how your end users should prepare themselves. The researchers, they have a very big role to play, because I might disagree with the Brian story that it's not a problem. It is a challenge. Maybe you are having a very smart system, maybe the conditions you have worked in, but of course we know Brian is a big problem in Saudi Arabia brine in the inland in Egypt, it's still a problem. We don't have a solution for it. In the inland, we don't know what to do with the brine. We have a Moghra project, a big challenge. It needs a solution. And what's the solution? Because you have is it desalination? Yes, but what are you going to do with the brine? No one knows. There are ideas, but technically when it comes to implementation, there is a challenge. So we have to solve it. Zero liquid discharge, abstracting minerals from the brine, but all of these are still at the testing and R&D phase, are not yet ready for implementation. So researchers have a big role to play, because desalination is the concept is very simple. 2 inputs and 2 outputs. Saline water and energy as input. Output, fresh water and brine. The energy is not an issue. I believe that the energy is not an issue. We have the new contracts in Egypt for photovoltaic, 2 cents per kilowatt hour. No one can imagine this price 10 years ago. 2 cents per kilowatt hour. So the energy is becoming to be the easy part of the story. The big problem is still of the price, the membrane, owning the know-how, the cost of the capex and opex, plus the brine. And all of these, they need more and more R&D. So researchers, they have a big role to play. International agencies and donors, I appreciate and thank very much the passion and the motivation and the support of UNDP. Thank you very much for being with us in this topic and moving, not only at the level of the office in Cairo, but at the headquarter level. The UNDP believes in this concept. You know who else is moving in the direction? The FAO. And this is a big move. 2 years ago, it was not a topic for discussion, desalination for irrigation. Today, I tell you that the FAO is going to produce publication about desalination for agriculture. And once the DFA takes this idea and move, then I think it will have another big impact like what the UNDP is doing. Funding, international donors, they have to start putting money in this idea. They have to push it. They have to support it, to encourage everyone to move, either invest in R&D or with the private sector or with the end users, farmers. And the private sector also has a role to play. They have to minimize the cost and not making big profits at the beginning, because we just need to move. And I think some of the private sector are really doing a great job. And I believe that Aquamid can also help in this issue. When we collaborate together, they are very open for discussion. We need also to ask the private sector to invest in R&D so that they can work with universities, research centers, and invest in a project to come to low-cost technology or lower the cost, but also greener desalination. Because desalination, as it stands today, there are some environmental concerns. So we need to green the desalination in the coming. Government, ministers, they also have a role to play, to support, to have the environment, to put the environment for the researchers, the investors, the consultants, the international agents to work together. And I hope that we will do this and we continue doing it, because we started 2 years ago and we are going to continue pushing. Second is to subsidize. We are willing to subsidize, and the government is subsidizing. The water treatment plant, the 3 biggest in the world, 1 million cubic meter per day, 5.6 million cubic meter per day, 7.5 million cubic meter per day. These are subsidies from the Egyptian government to the farmers. They are not paying for the infrastructure. We paid as a government for the infrastructure. The government invested 400 billion Egyptian pounds in the last 10 years for the water sector, and mainly for water treatment. We are going to continue to do that, but we need to see the model. The model is not ready. The business model for desalination for agriculture is not yet ready, and I think this is the next step. We need to have a business model, at least for Egypt, to start. So, finally, I told you, finally, I see the hope for the region is in the 3S, as I always say: sun, sand, and salty water. That's what's available in the region. We have plenty of sun, we have plenty of sand, and we have plenty of salty water. We just need to use the 3S in one side to produce food at the other side. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank our distinguished panelists for a really rich and insightful session. I would like also to thank you, dear audience, for your attendance. Thank you so much.